Welcome back to The Grind. In this video, we are going to take a look at the Cut Your Losses and Burden of Might lane in Act 7.2. Now, in this, you do want to have the class disadvantage to gain superiority because that will allow you to stack up the damage bonus that is available. How this works is every time you lose power, you are going to gain a passive non-stacking Fury. However, if you have the class disadvantage and have superiority, then you will be able to stack those Furies. And the way that you get those Furies is by triggering a buff, which then drains some of your power based on the note. You also have to deal with destructive feedback. So you can see that gray timer now. Destructive feedback is down, so I can deal damage freely. However, when that timer ends and at the start of the fight, you do have a yellow timer, and that means all of the damage that you're doing is not yet dealt to the champion, but it is stored up. And if the opponent touches you, that damage will be dealt to you until the very end of that timer. Then all of that damage finally explodes on the opponent. So you can still do damage during that phase and it is all dealt to the opponent at the end. But if you mess up and he clips you, then you do end up taking all of that damage and that can very easily kill you. So some people just avoid him or avoid the opponent during that yellow phase. With Hulkbuster, you do have the option to just keep him locked in the corner and not basically cleared most of or almost the entire phase, and then it explodes at the end and the fight is over. Now remember, you want to have the class disadvantage, so there are Cosmic Champions and Mystic Champions on the lane. For the Mystic Champions, Hyperion actually worked very well because he triggers lots of buffs, which means you will be able to stack lots of those passive Furies. However, that also means your power is going to be drained frequently, so it's ideal to spend your power when you have it. So you see me throwing off lots of special ones, and with all of those passive Furies stacking up, in addition to Hyperion's natural Furies, we are getting some very nice damage on those Incinerates. And again, when destructive feedback does go active, you want to play very carefully so that you do not take the damage to yourself that has been applied during that period, allowing that damage to then be exploded on the opponent at the end of that timer. So Hyperion worked very well. Look at 11 passive Furies that we've built up on that. Our basic attacks are doing some insane amounts of damage and the fights end pretty quick. The next fight is going to be against Carnage, and I brought Hulkbuster in for this fight as well. And you see, I don't typically sit back during this destructive feedback phase. I just play very cautious, try to bait out heavies to get my ins, and then counter special attacks when able. And then as soon as that destructive feedback timer is on cooldown, I can go and do my parries as much as I need. And I recently took Hulkbuster to rank 5, so I've been using him a little bit more, and he's actually a lot of fun to play. I definitely do enjoy playing him, but I'm not yet the best at his play style, so it is a work in progress, and you may see some mistakes. You ideally want to throw the special 2 into the opponent's block, but sometimes I'm not able to get that, so I just throw it into them, their basic while they're attacking into me, and it doesn't drain their power, but it still does put a power lock on them. So if they don't have a bar of power, you can still go in and chain some heavies on after that. And if you can get a few of the passive Furies stacked up with Hulkbuster, he starts to deal some insane damage, and those heavy attacks dealing over 20-30,000 damage per heavy attack. And if you can chain on a few in the corner, you can really stack up a lot of damage during that destructive feedback phase. But you do have to be careful because sometimes you do whiff your heavy attacks, so you do have to be cautious of the spacing in there, and I got lucky so I didn't get hit. The next fight is against Loki, which is a pretty straightforward fight. Loki's not too complicated to handle except for the fact that he can get lots of special ones because he does have power gain below a bar of power. I brought in Silver Surfer as my second Cosmic Champion because he does have access to lots of buffs as well, and you can see we've stacked up I think 9 passive Furies at that point there. We are skipping most of this fight because there is not a whole lot to it, and it's a lot of the same of what we've talked about so far, being cautious around that destructive feedback and then letting it explode to finish off fights at times. The last cosmic fight and second last fight on this path is against Kamala Khan, and this is also a very straightforward, easy fight. Not too much difficulties associated with the champion itself. You just want that class disadvantage so you can get those stackable passive Furies. We're going to skip most of this fight again as well. There was no particular reason I chose Guillotine except for having another option with immunities for one of the bosses. Unfortunately, I did not end up being able to ramp her up in this fight, but I just said I didn't care anymore and went with just completing the fight because I felt like I would be able to deal with the boss. And the very last fight on this path is Thor Jane Foster. Again, a pretty straightforward champion, been around a long time. A lot of people are comfortable fighting against her. I used Silver Surfer in this fight. As you can see, I sometimes get clipped by the special one, but because Silver Surfer doesn't take damage to shock, it actually lets, and that's the second time right there, it actually doesn't do damage to Silver Surfer, so it is a source of healing, and that shock can sometimes deal a ton of damage. So it actually worked out nice to have Silver Surfer in this fight, but if you are a better player than I, then just don't get hit by it, and it's nothing to worry about. So let me know which champions you use for this path if you had any troubles with it. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Check out the playlist for other guides of 7.2, and I hope to see you in the next video.